Hello again, Steve here with a few comments on something I read in a book that I was reading over the last few months, a few pages a day. But I think it really helps in order for us to understand the human tendency to want to have both freedom and security. There's the very famous quote, of course, from I think it's Thomas Jefferson, and I'll just try to read it. That's why I'm looking over here. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. In other words, to be totally free or to be more free is to give up the security blanket. And this is like, that's part of maturing, right? Part of maturing is that we move away from the house and the bosom of our mothers and the income of our fathers and so on to make it on our own. And that has certain risks to it and certain dangers to it. But in the process, we're getting more liberty. And, hopefully in time, they meld together in sort of ways so that we become more of ourselves, and that we see that liberty or that freedom as so important. And in it, there is I think in time, that freedom that we have, we can create certain amounts of security for ourselves and others, but it's not inherent, I would say. Now, I want to read a little bit of this book at the end because it's the final conclusion of this book was really worthy of a discussion, I think. And I'll just read a paragraph here, just to hopefully be able to present why I think it's really important. Okay, the power of the historian or political philosopher to influence events is no doubt strictly limited, but he can influence the attitude of mind which is adopted towards those developments. Like a psychologist who cures by making the patient aware of his subconscious, the social analyst may be able to attack the human urge which calls totalitarian democracy into existence, namely the longing for a final resolution of all contradictions and conflicts into a state of total harmony. It is a harsh but nonetheless necessary task to drive home the truth that human society and human life can never reach a state of repose. That imagined repose is another name for the security offered by a prison, and the longing for it may, in a sense, be an expression of cowardice and laziness, of the inability to face the fact that life is a perpetual and never resolved crisis. All that can be done is to proceed by the method of trial and error. I think that's a great summation because, if we see the totalitarians and what these people, these Jacobins and, Robespierre and Babu and all those guys, they were trying to create a prescription that would be imposed upon everybody, right? And this is what the socialists do. They try to create a prescription, which then they want to impose on everybody. But the thing is, everybody has their own internal unique desires. And when you blend that all together, it is a trial and error as to what's going to work. One of the things I see with Toastmasters is any organization that becomes largely bureaucratic, you have a prescription. This is the way we do it. But then what comes along is demographics change. And all of a sudden, your prescription doesn't work. And even if it is the same demographic, the times change. Out comes Meetup, and there's 35 different types of events taking place in a city at one time, whereas before there wasn't. All of these things require trial and error, whereas big bureaucratic institutions, they cannot really address this. I remember I mentioned this before actually in another video, I think, where the success of religions goes along this line, although it's not necessarily totalitarian, but the same sort of approach in terms of giving people this false sense of security, I would say. And I was talking to this pastor who had a buddy who had created who had a friend who was another pastor who had been successful in creating, I believe, 3 different congregations, 3 different churches. And he said, if you follow a certain formula, you will be successful. And that formula is, there is a God. God loves you. And everything's going to be okay. You see, I think that most people's lives are this ongoing, never resolved crisis. There's always these never resolved crises or problems in our lives, and this is a natural state. I mean, the ultimate one is that we're going to die, right? So even that we're trying to cure. But we're always trying to cure the problems in our lives. We could call them crisis, if you don't like a crisis, problems, challenges, whatever, substitute whatever word, but it doesn't change what it is. People are always trying to go for something. If they don't, they're perpetually depressed and in bed. And some people, and even that is a crisis in itself. But this is the human nature. This is the way that we've evolved, the way that we grow, the way that we develop, the way that we want to have a family and so on, whatever it is that we want to do. It's because of these things that are unresolved. We're constantly trying to resolve them. If somebody comes along to us and says, I've got the solution for you, there is this God or this state or this socialist utopia or whatever, it or he loves you and we love you or whatever, and everything's going to be okay. Well, if we fall for that, we're just falling for a new form of devil, that's all. I mean, it's like the story with Jesus up on the mountain, right? Jesus got this big problem. He's got all these people he's got to save or whatever. And the devil says, just give it to me. Give your burdens to me or whatever, and I'll give you all this, right? It's like, that's why it's called selling our soul, right? Because when we sell our soul, we're no longer free. The soul, you could say, you could substitute the word individuality, right? Because solo is one, right? And I know it's a different spelling and so on, but it's probably the same origin. That's the individuality. As soon as we glom onto some group, into some sort of totalitarian democracy, and it could be dressed up as utopia or whatever it is, nevertheless, we're selling ourselves into this collective. And for the security, we're selling ourselves for the promise of everything's going to be okay. Just give up your individuality. Well, then we don't deserve freedom, because it doesn't make any sense. You cannot have more individuality, I think, the more that we sell ourselves into the collective. And yeah, so I think it is true. I think it is true, especially most of the time. Maybe there are cases where it's not true, but I think that Benjamin Franklin was right. Those who, what did he say? Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Because there's always risk, right? There's always risk. And this idea that there is a utopia that's good for everybody, it doesn't make any sense at all. And if we remember that, the essence or the main cornerstone of life is this perpetual crisis or challenge or what's not wanted or pain or whatever. There's always some of it there. And that is, in a way, one way of looking at that is to be grateful for. We're to be grateful. We can learn how to be grateful for that, because through that we get to see what we want. We get to see the direction in which we want to strive. And that's very powerful, I think. So yeah, that was just my comment for this morning. I think that final passage in this book, The Origins of Totalitarian Democracy by J.L. Talman, are very telling. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, and share. And comment in the box below. Talk again soon. Bye for now.